Hi, and welcome to our recap episode. It's been about a week and a half since we finished War and Peace. I'm Matthew Robinson. Hi, Dmitry Portnoy.
Hello, dear heart. It feels like a week and a half, but we're in a timeless zone where it could have been years or it could have been 10 minutes ago, as far as I'm
It
concerned.
has felt like years. First but foremost, I want to show off our bookmarks here. I promised I would make and send out bookmarks to people. I would like to thank Edamaros Peleg for designing these gorgeous bookmarks for me for free. I'm having a hard time getting a nice focus on here. It says, I read War and Peace during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic with Matthew Robinson and Dmitry Portnoy. And on the back, we have a lovely photo of Count Leo Tolstoy wearing gloves and a mask. And my camera hates me today and hates focusing. But if you read War and Peace starting in the COVID pandemic and finished it at any point in the year of our Lord 2020, you can email me at contact@gamebrain.com. GamebrainPod.com. Sorry, GamebrainPod. That's GamebrainPod.com. That is our board game podcast. If you like tabletop board games, go ahead and check that out as well. Contact that and give me your address, and I will send you free of charge a bookmark right here. I have a lot of them. I will send them to you. Honor system here. The money comes out of my own pocket and my children's mouths. I have 2 young children. It's between you and your God if you want to just lie and say you read War and Peace and get a free bookmark. I won't know, but Tolstoy will know.
You're taking it from Nikolenko.
That is right. So, Dmitry, let's talk about this. So if you've watched any of our episodes or you just want to hear our overall thoughts on War and Peace, we are going to discuss how it felt to have read it during the pandemic, our final thoughts on the book. It's my 3rd time. It is Dmitry's first. Why don't we start with you, Dmitry? How are you feeling having not read War and Peace over the last 10 days?
Well, after the big project, you always wake up for the first 2 or 3 days thinking, I should be doing something. And it's not there. It's almost like stepping up, expecting an extra step, but hitting the ground instead.
Yeah.
It's a pleasant jolt because it does remind you that War and Peace is done and that you are finished with it. And now I know what it is. And it's very different from what I thought.
So let's talk about that. What did you think War and Peace would be, and what did it end up being?
I thought it would be a sweeping, historical, very Russian epic.
What does very Russian mean to you? You are of Russian descent. What does very Russian mean to you?
Large scale, operatic, and emotions expressed in huge gestures with swelling music behind them.
So Russians are not subtle, you're saying. They paint with primary colors.
Or at least really saturated dark colors.
Yes, got it.
And this is not that. The emotional descriptions are extremely precise and specific and individual and peculiar, which are things that I don't associate with Russians. To me, I grew up with Russians and are very expected and very basic. This book is nothing like that. It is consistently surprising and pivots on tiny, unexpected details.
Yeah, that to me is the thing about Tolstoy. I think Tolstoy is the great observer. I think all writers have to be preternaturally talented observers. I think that is the job of any writer or storyteller. And I think Tolstoy is the Michael Jordan, nay Tiger Woods of observers. I think he sees the details that paint the whole picture. I think he notices things we don't imagine anyone has ever noticed about us, the tiniest little quirks that say everything. Yeah, that's the main thing I take away when I'm reading Tolstoy is just, I can't believe he noticed that and remembered it and pinned it to the wall like a rare species of butterfly for all of us to see.
It's not the size of the screen; it's the resolution.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah,
and it's like really tiny, very very precise brush strokes.
yeah, he's 4K for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This was my third time reading it. We're also reading it in an unusual time. This is a high stress time for me. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. My wife and I have no childcare. I'm still attempting to work a full-time job as a screenwriter. This is a highly unenjoyable experience, this quarantine. This is not relaxing. This is not downtime. This is not catch up on Netflix. This is 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and then trying to get some sleep and do it all over again. So being able to even read War and Peace was no easy task, and at times annoying, because it was just something that I was forcing myself to do, and I didn't have time, and it was taking away from time for myself or things like that. But I actually, it was a positive experience and something I'm glad I did. It gave me something to do every day, outside of my normal things I have to do every day. It gave me something to focus on. It helped me not look at my phone for the hour and a half a day I was reading, not check the news. And outside of that, I was reading, one of my 3 favorite novels of all time, which is a comforting and relaxing experience. So to say how it, like the experience of reading it the first time was in college, in my sophomore year of college, reading it for schoolwork, where I had literally nothing else to do all day long but think about War and Peace and read War and Peace. The second time I read it was in 2011 when the Volokhonsky translation came out. Also no children, also plenty of time. I was working, busy during that time, but nothing like I'm busy now. So, reading it now in a pandemic was the least enjoyable of the 3, of course. But that's like saying, anything is the least enjoyable thing I've done since this pandemic started. But the one thing I took away from it was that how much harder it is to read than Anna Karenina. So I've read both of those books. Well, yeah, I've read Anna Karenina. I've already read Anna Karenina 3 times in my life as well. So now I've read them both 3 times. And Anna Karenina is a lot easier. What's funny is I didn't remember this being as challenging to read. I didn't remember the long stretches of war explanations and... Oh, your picture just got smaller for no reason. I didn't remember there being sections that were, I hate to use the word boring, but harder to read than other sections. Anna Karenina is basically, if you liked the non-war sections of War and Peace and were bored during the war sections, you will love Anna Karenina, because it's just War and Peace without the war sections. There is a little bit of war, but I mean, there's no point where Tolstoy goes, I hope you enjoyed that wonderfully, perfectly written scene. Now let me talk to you for, an hour and a half about my feelings on, chaos and free will. He doesn't do that for you. He just tells you a good yarn in Anna Karenina. So reading War and Peace, I found myself yearning to read Anna Karenina again, because it just is easier.
I have a theory about how War and Peace came to be written. Okay. You're a writer, I'm a writer, and every time I read something, I kind of ask myself, how would I have written it? Not could I have written it, but if I had to, or if I wanted to, how would I go about it? And I think War and Peace exists in the shape that it does, because Tolstoy started out with a very polished, very well-written outline of all the events.
Yeah.
The war events that are largely historical, and the peacetime events that are largely fictional. And these were like 300 pages, 70 to 80 pages per volume. Mm-hmm. And then he went back and started dramatizing some, of those events and leaving others in outline form.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're reading the novel, we're actually reading in a lot of places that outline.
Yeah, that makes
The,
sense.
the number one place we read that outline is in Anna's parties when people
Right.
report events that happened off
Sure.
screen. Uh, for example, when we find out that Pierre actually did inherit his dad's Kirilov's
Yeah.
estate, we're reading part of the outline. We're also reading part of the outline, for example, when Andre, after his wife's death, goes off writing and building a house uh, a hill in his estate. And we're reading a condensed version of events that kind of rushes by.
Yeah.
But then when he comes home and has that heartbreaking scene where he's reading Bluebeard to his son, and he can't finish it, and his son walks off, uh, that is a
Yeah.
dramatized scene.
Yeah. It's
And
like
I
he's
think,
changing scope as he wants to. He pulls way out, he zooms way in, the camera's flying around in his narrative, and he does seem to get some sort of thrill out of giving us the most important character information in the fastest and least dramatic way possible, as just that giant bullet, that giant plot line I've been feeding to you for 400 pages. Another character in the background is going to tell you how that ends now.
for example, when Pierre's wife dies, it's reported at a
Yeah.
party in a
Yeah.
conversation between two people. And for me, that says that that outline had to have
Sure.
existed. That it's on paper, and he's making decisions as he's writing the draft of what really draws him to the narrative and what he wants to dramatize and what he wants to leave. Uh, by the time we get to volume 4, which is 100 pages in this translation shorter than the others, I feel we're reading much more of the outline than we did in the previous 3 volumes. That fewer of the events are dramatized, and more of them are left in that very polished narrative, uninflected history overview state. And I have a feeling of why that happens.
You think he was getting bored
And
of himself?
I think I think he was getting bored with his scheme, and I think he altered his scheme. I think Nikolai disappears in the second half of the book, and I think he was supposed to play a much more important part in volume 4. If you remember, Petya, Nikolai's brother, goes on an adventure with Dolokhov to visit the enemy camp. And they skulk around, they get information. It's
the
high
Guns
adventure.
of Navarone section.
That's right. And do you remember what happens to Petya the
he gets
next
shot
day?
in the head.
And he dies in whose arms? Do you remember?
Whose arms does Petya die in? All right, hold on. Is it Denisov?
It is Denisov, yes. He dies in Denisov's
the dancer.
arms. I think that's right. And I think my theory is that in Tolstoy's original outline, that was supposed to be Nikolai.
Right. It's almost like Petya's a rewrite of Nikolai, a faster version of him, with everything he wanted to say.
Well, actually, what I actually think is that Petya was supposed to die in Nikolai's arms.
I see. Oh, Denisov was going to be Nikolai. Interesting. Okay.
I think that Dolokhov and Denisov are two people. Denisov didn't die in the hospital. Dolokhov appears out of nowhere to save Pierre's life. I think that Petya and Nikolai were the pair that were supposed to ride into the enemy camp speaking French. And I think Petya, the brother, the younger 16-year-old, 17-year-old brother was supposed to die in Nikolai's arms, and provide a huge emotional
Sure.
payoff to all the war sections. Because in America, we're used to brother
Sure,
fighting
sure.
brother because we had the Civil War. In Tolstoy's time during Russian history, that Russia did not experience a big civil war yet. So that was supposed to be the huge dramatic climax of the war sections of
Yeah.
the novels, where we see the heroism and we also see the
Right.
cost. And Tolstoy decided not to
Interesting.
do
So,
that.
that's your
And I think
theory. This is not fact. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's my theory. Like I'm really asking myself, here I am, how would I bring the war sections to a
Yeah,
huge
you're putting yourself in
climax?
his shoes as a writer. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and I also am trying to explain Nikolai's
Right.
disappearance, and also trying to explain why Volume 4 seems to be slightly slighted, uh, slightly cut off, slightly shrunken, shorter, and seemingly much more in outline
Right.
form.
We could probably get the answers
It
to most
doesn't
of
have
these
as
things, as he
many.
was a constant journalist, a diaryist, I would say, and he wrote many letters. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of documentation of his writing process of War and Peace, but I'm not sure I've read much of it. I do have his collected letters somewhere and many of his journals that him and his wife kept together. His wife was a huge part of his writing process as well and transcribed everything that he did. And
Oh, like uh oh oh God. Okay, never mind. Yes, there's a lot of transcribing.
yes,
Milton's
got it.
wife and daughters transcribed Paradise Lost and Paradise
Yeah.
Found, and Milton's daughter also
Oh,
went
interesting.
blind
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say that
doing
Tolstoy's
it.
wife is actually as should be as much of a credited writer because there are theories that he never read anything after she took it from him and edited it and rewrote sections. So
Oh,
there are theories that she is as much of an author as he is, and that she may have had a hand in a lot of changes and rewrites.
that makes a lot of sense.
Um, what would you say when you think of War and Peace? Let's do what your favorite moment is and what you think is the best moment of the book, the most memorable, the moment that seals the book for you. When you think of the book, is there a moment that comes to mind? And is it perchance also your favorite moment?
Yes, but it could also be my having read it for the
Okay.
first time. And my favorite moment is the ending of the dramatic
Yeah.
portion of the book, the ending of part one of the
Yeah.
epilogue, where
Hmm.
Nikolenko, the son of Andrei, the orphan son of Andrei, realizes that his life is going to be defined by a battle between Pierre, representing enlightened, liberal, intellectual Russia, and Andrei, representing conservative, capitalist, God and country Russia. And for me, that's the moment where everything in the novel comes
Hmm.
into focus. And it really does become uh, the prologue to where we
Yeah.
are now, remarkably, 150 years after its
Yeah.
publication. And what that focus comes not at the expense of uh, Nikolai or Pierre, but in the fullest embodiment of what Nikolai and Pierre believe, and how they lead their lives. And we've seen the steps it took for them to get to that point. But it's not at that moment did I realize that they were opposing
Right.
forces, that they were actually being driven apart by their circumstances, by their participation in
Mm-hmm.
the war, and by their participation in the peace.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful ending. And there's not many. I feel like in a book this long and epic, you would be okay if there wasn't such a strong ending. But I think what separates Tolstoy from a lot of the other great writers is that he knows he knows how to tell a story and end it well. I think you know, some of my favorite other writers, Dickens, you know, his endings aren't necessarily what you remember him for. But Tolstoy, you do,
What
especially
it
Anna Karenina
also,
too. No spoilers there,
yeah,
but that's got quite an ending.
I think the ending also justifies the length of the
Right.
novel.
Which a lot of other epic writers, you forgive them not having an amazing ending because there was such a journey, you know, and so much effort to get there.
This is not the Scouring
Yeah.
of the Shire,
Or the ending of every
which
Stephen
is
King
kind of an
novel.
anticlimax. Sure, sure. This is actually the point where all the 1,200 preceding pages
Right.
led to, in a very
Yeah.
convincing way. Uh, how exactly did these two parties, philosophically opposed frames of mind, came to
Yeah.
that place?
Well, I think for me, my favorite moment is still, or the moment that I think of when I think of this book is still, and it's not, it's three moments. It's three characters all experiencing the same thing, which is the sky. I always think of those moments when the characters are noticing the sky in a near death sort of reborn moment, whether it's Nikolai or Andre or Pierre, they all have their big sky moments. That to me is what I think of. That to me is the singular war and peace experience. Although the ending did hit me harder than maybe it had in any other readings. It cemented itself well for me this time in a way it hadn't before, I think. And yeah, of course, the whole comet sequence is a novel in and of itself, and hard not to think about as well. Yeah, so you know, I'm really glad we did this. It was a really wonderful way to spend 24 days that would have been a lot harder without it. It was nice to see you every day, Dmitry, for 24 days.
Good to see you
And
too.
go
This
ahead.
reminds me. This reminds me a little bit of that old rabbi tale where uh, this guy comes to the rabbi and says, "We have no room. I have my wife, I have my 6 kids. We live in a 3-room house. We have an outhouse. Help!" And the rabbi says, "Get a
Mm-hmm.
goat." Do you know
Go
this one?
ahead, tell it.
Yeah. So for a month later, the guy says, comes to the rabbi and says, "Rabbi, I'm driving myself mad. I have a wife and 6 kids and this goat, and the goat is eating everything and destroying the furniture. We
Right,
have no room for the goat or myself or the wife." And the rabbi says, "Okay, now get rid of the goat."
right. And of course,
And of
now
course,
it's
the
his
guy
life is
says, "Oh, we
amazing, right?
have all." Yeah, yeah. So War
War
and
and Peace
Peace
is a
is a
goat.
goat.
Yeah. No, I missed the goat a little bit. It was
Yes,
definitely an obstacle to wrestle with every day. Um,
you are my rabbi. Do
my
you have
beard is getting rabbinical lengths of beard at the moment.
very much? And now we have so much more
Yeah.
room. But we also had the
Yeah.
goat, that laid a bunch of really golden eggs for us to feast on later and maybe sell if we need some extra cash.
Um,
That's a
yeah.
mixed
Well,
metaphor.
let's do another one of these at some point in the future when this pandemic is over and things are a little easier. I was thinking a fun one could be maybe your favorite novel of all time.
Yes, yes. My book of gold, the book that taught me to
And you
read.
want to tell people what that
Uh,
is?
oh, yeah, it's the Book of the New Sun, like War and Peace. It is also in
Yeah.
4 volumes. It is a science fiction novel by Gene Wolfe. It is half the
But
length
takes
of
twice
War
as
and
long to
Peace.
read.
So, well, the interesting thing is that it's a book that I've read four
Yeah.
times. And how many times did
Once.
you read it? once. So this will be a kind of a
I
flip
don't. I don't
side
think
of
you
this
should read
experiment.
50 pages of Gene Wolfe in a day, though. I think we should lower that. Not because, well, because it's so much denser. I think you don't want to just push through. You have to be there for every word.
Like War and Peace, it is a novel that rewards as much
Yeah.
attention that you want to pay for it, pay to it. There are puns and hidden meanings in the titles of
Yeah.
the book and the four parts: the Book of the New Sun, the Shadow of the Sorcerer, the Claw of the Conciliator, the Sword of the Lictor, the Citadel of the Autarch. Uh, all these five titles have multiple meanings that you can discover. And by the way, if you don't know what any of these titles mean
Yeah.
at this point, as opposed to War and Peace,
Yeah.
that's okay. Unlike War and Peace, which is told by an omniscient narrator who knows everything and can enter the heads of every character, the Book of the New Sun is written in
Mm-hmm.
first person. How do you feel about first person narrations? I know that some people are upset by first person narrations. They don't like
I
them.
mean, I'm fine with any story that's well told. I'll enjoy it. But I think this was the first book where I really saw it as a much more interesting medium or art form than I think I had seen it before. I mean, there's a handful of great uses of it, but this was maybe the most interesting I'd ever seen.
There are also energy weapons and monsters and
Yeah. No,
aliens and
it's real
spaceships.
sci-fi.
It's absolute real sci-fi, and most of the time you really have no idea
Yeah.
what's going on.
All right. Well, we'll save that for another day. But I think we should do that next, and I think that would be a fun thing to do together. Or at least I would enjoy it. If nobody else joins in, that's fine. But it's something I'd like to do.
Uh, I read it when I was 15. Like you, basically, you read War and Peace when you were a teenager. I read this as a teenager, and it
Yeah.
shaped me. It taught me what reading can be and what reading is about, and how to pay attention to a text in more than one way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, get your bookmark. contact@gamebrainpod.com. Give me your address. I'll send you a bookmark if you read War and Peace sometime in 2020. If you're watching this video in like 2022 or something and you just read War and Peace, you can try. If I feel like it, maybe I'll send you one. Or if I have the time, or if I still have the bookmarks. But either way, if you get one in 2020, I got you. Guaranteed. I will send it to you wherever you are, as long as you really did read it. Thank you, Dmitry. This was very enjoyable. This was our 50 pages a day quarantine edition read through of Count Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. Signing off. Go ahead, Dmitry.
Yes, say
please.
One
go
more
ahead.
thing. Welcome to the secret society of Masons, a secret brotherhood of people
Who've read
War and Peace, and we will always recognize each other because death is
an awakening. That's what we say when we do our secret handshake and whisper dear heart into each other's ears.
And the past is prologue.
All right. Take care, Dmitry. See you soon. Love you too.
Love
Bye-bye.
you, Matt.